Before we dive into this episode, I just want to let you know if you want to get access to episodes before anybody else, head on over to patreon.com/concerts that made us. And as a bonus, you'll get access to videos of some of the episodes and a host of other benefits. We've also teamed up with Band Builder Academy to offer you 10% off their membership. Details of both can be found in the show notes below.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down, the greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts, concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.
I am Rixie.
He is Paul.
And that's Leroy.
We are After Wonderland, and you are listening to
Concerts that made us.
Found myself being a contortionist again, bending and breaking my back to appease your instruction. Sometimes I feel like a marionette puppet. My hands are tied by strings, and I can't control them. Want to, can you hear me? But no one looks up from their seats. So I grab the pen and my porcelain mask and I start drawing who you wanna see tonight. This ain't no fun house. You just bought a ticket to my insane asylum. What did you expect? You pull at the strings, well of course they'll snap. I looked in my hands, I pull at the strings and where's the puppet master at? Can you understand my bewilderment when I look up ahead and see nothing? Oh no, where's my straitjacket? I think I've lost it again. Who's gonna hold me tonight? And I'm scared if you looked in my head. All you'd see is a monkey with cymbals in his hands, and he's going clap, clap, clap. Want to, can you hear me? But no one looks up from their phone. So I grab the pen and my porcelain mask and I start drawing who you wanna see tonight. This ain't no fun house. You just bought a ticket to my insane asylum. What did you expect? You pull at the strings, well of course they'll snap. I looked in my hands, I pull at the strings and where's the puppet master at? Can you understand my bewilderment when I look up ahead and see nothing but my own reflection?
Leroy, Rixie and Paul, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
I'm looking forward to diving into your music now, I have to say. So you guys released Straitjacket on the 15th of August. What can you tell us about it?
So Straitjacket is sort of an idea that came from an inside joke, and it just turned into this weirdly awesome, I think, musical piece that we all sort of put our brains into.
There is something about a monkey clapping his hands or something I've heard.
Yes. So, so I sort of had this inside joke with myself, as one does, when my boyfriend and I just started seeing each other. He would always think I was being philosophical when I was looking into the distance and be like, "Oh, what's on your mind?" And like sometimes you're actually just looking off into the distance. So my inside joke was, "Oh no, there's just a monkey in there clapping his little hands away." And at some point, I thought that would be really funny to write into a song. And when I started with the sort of lyrical ideas for Straitjackets, where I wanted to sort of talk about, not being this like puppet on strings and like, conforming to society or doing what you think other people want you to do. It just, I think, worked itself into the song in a really cool kind of way.
Right. And what was the recording process like then? You went back to some original live recordings and added new parts, I believe.
Well, we're lucky enough that we have a good friend that has like a nice studio for pre-production ideas, so we'd taken some things in there before that we try to get some ideas going and see what we can make from them. So we essentially started with that pre-production idea. And then when we decided that was going to be a single that we were going to release, we then obviously went to like a more fully fleshed studio, let me say. And some of the tracks that we had made in the pre-production ideas landed up being permanent fixtures in the properly produced song, if I can say it like that.
Yeah, it's cool. There's actually a little snippet of us all clapping our hands.
Yeah, in fact,
in there.
I think my whole bass part was actually still just the pre-production idea that was just dropped into the real thing, So yeah, it was cool to see something that started as an idea end up as a fully fledged product without having too much overthinking. I think we sometimes lose something along the way in the overthinking.
If you could make that happen for every release now, you'd be, in heaven.
Yeah, and actually that is part of our idea moving forward with our releases. The idea is to go to this pre-production studio where there's time and like a safe space to be creative, and not judge yourself or your band members too harshly. And then when we finally take that to the proper studio, hopefully see what carries over. And I think the more that carries over, the more honest the release is, if that makes sense.
True, yeah. And typically when you guys are working on new music, then what does that look like? Is it a totally collaborative effort, or do one of you guys like handle the lyrics and bring it to the rest?
I think I would like to say it's almost fully collaborative, because I think I'm lucky in the sense that I'm with, these other musicians that have these really cool parts that they bring to the band that fit in with lyrics that I've already had, sitting in a backlog of lyrics that I just have sitting somewhere with something that I need to do something with. So I think we all, bring something forward where it starts off as like one sort of weak thing, but like together they all become stronger and better. So it's a really cool creative space, I think, for all of us. Greater than the sum of their parts is the saying that I am fond of.
I like it.
And for me, who joined the band like a little bit after things had gotten going, like Rixie had already written some songs and she wanted to do something with these songs. So for me as a member who joined later, I was joining and these songs were already written. And from there, we kind of added our bits to these existing songs. And that was like a good platform to get us started. But I think as we go further past the songs that were pre-ideated, let me say, as we go further past those songs, they become more and more collaborative with every release. So I think it's a learning curve.
Some parts are better than others.
Exactly. Your parts are the weakest. Thank you for agreeing.
I'd love to let the listeners know the history of the band, the short history, I suppose. It's only been since 2021, but what's the story behind the band? How did you guys all come together?
Paul, do you want to answer that question?
I can give my spin on it, sure. So I knew Leroy for a long time from music shops and fellow bands and just the general music scene. And Rixie I'd never known, but I actually played with a band that had her, what's Lisa to you? Your aunt?
Sister-in-law.
Sister-in-law. Okay, yeah. So my previous band, well, my other band, played with Rixie's sister-in-law's band. So it's quite a small, strange little scene.
Incestuous.
Yeah, very incestuous, yeah. But I'm not sure if you guys spoke about our drummer or anything like that yet.
Nothing.
No, okay. So a guy called Mark is a drummer, and he came to me and said, there's this girl that was living in America. She's written some songs. It's lockdown. Do you want to just come and listen to them and maybe play along? I was like, oh, it's going to be terrible, but sure, why not?
And you were right.
Yeah, I was right. But yeah, I got there and met Rixie and a couple of other people that were involved there. And from the very beginning, I was like, yes, Leroy would be a great bass player, but he's too busy. He's too good. He'll never join us. And then after one or two bass players kind of came and went, one night we were after practice, we were like, let's just phone Leroy and ask him. He was like, yeah, cool, I'll come round. And then he came round and never left.
Story of my life.
He latched on like a tick or something.
It's beautiful.
When it comes to your music then going forward, what do you hope people get from it? Is there an underlying message that you'd like to convey?
I think the most important thing for me is that everyone can sort of take their own sort of ideas from the songs. I think all of us are on the same page when we don't want anything to ever really be too specific that not everyone can relate to it. So, I mean, if one person can listen to our song and be like, oh, you know, that makes me think of this one thing that happened to me, or this one feeling that I once had, and it makes them, you know, resonate with the song more and love the song and appreciate it more, I think that's probably something that we all want people to take from the music itself.
Yeah, I get you. And I suppose at this stage, we'll give the listeners a sense of where you guys come from musically. So it's a bit of a tricky one now, but if you can you remember your earliest musical memory?
Yeah, I can remember I must have been 8 or 9 or something.
That's like 1923.
Yeah, in the distant mists of time. I was sitting at home with my dad. My mom had gone out. My dad was sitting listening to vinyls, and I can't even remember what he listened to Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and all that 70s kind of stuff. But I remember his record player caught fire. So,
Oh, God.
when my mom got home, she's like, what have you boys been doing? But that's it's not specifically musical or anything, but I just remember that. I can remember that scene so clearly. Strangely enough.
Pretty cool one, I have to say.
Yeah. I think my youngest memory is sort of my dad pulling out tapes and putting them into, you know, that old school car where they still used to take the tape player. And also like Deep Purple and Pink Floyd were very big influences when I was younger because they were kind of forced down my ears by my father.
I would say that like myself and my best friend since childhood, you know, we made friends since we were like 3 years old, without exaggerating. And we always had this thing for music. And, you know, like dealing with a lot of youngsters as I do in my music teaching thing, you know, often you ask kids what they like about music. And sometimes they struggle to come up with the name of a song or two that they like. And for us, as long as I can remember, you know, we were always remembering the lyrics to the songs and, oh, listen to this cool part and listen to what the drums are doing. And that was long before we even knew how to play an instrument. And I think that just stuck, you know, and it was this idea of, I don't know what kind of magic they're doing, but I know that I want to be a part of it.
If you had to think back now, is there a moment, or what moment would you say sparked the desire to become a musician for you guys?
I like have a completely big, vivid memory of what sparked me wanting to be a musician. I think I was still quite young in high school, must have been
a year ago,
15. And my dad used to play these open mic nights sort of things where a whole bunch of, you know, these old musicians that used to be in these bands didn't play in these bands anymore. So they all used to get together on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And it was school holidays for me. And my dad was like, well, why don't you come along and come listen to some of the music? And one of my friends from high school and we went with, and we weren't allowed into the actual bar itself. But so we sat outside and listened to the music. But I remember just enjoying the atmosphere and the vibe and like the rawness of the sound of everything, because it was very much like a band practice. And just thinking to myself, I want to do this. I want to play an instrument. I want to create things. I want to be that person that was sitting behind the drum kits. And I mean, my friend and I went home that night and we were like, okay, cool, game plan. Let's start writing songs and let's form a band. So I think, yeah, for me, it was like 15 years old.
Wow. Yeah, I was in high school and the 90s started. So it was just Nirvana, Pearl Jam, like Guns N' Roses, all that sort of stuff was just suddenly on my radar. And I was like, this is amazing. Like I'd never been interested in music much in my younger days. And then I saw Slash's real name was Saul Hudson. And I was like, that sounds very similar to Paul Hodgson. I was like, it's a sign. I'm going to play the guitar one day. It was the same thing. Me and a couple of friends were like, you're going to play drums and you're going to play guitar and you're going to sing. None of us had an instrument or a clue, but also all the plans were there. You know, that band never ever happened, but all the dreams were there. You know, you're going to learn to play lead guitar like this and that. And, but it's just that dream. It's just so exciting. You're like, there's this stuff out there and you can do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. I also want to add to that quick as well. Yeah, same thing, you know, also 15 or 16. And some of my friends had decided that they were going to be in a band and they could all play the instruments already. And they were like, we need a bass player. And I was like, I'll do it. And they were like, do you know how to play bass? And I was like, no. And yeah, that's the thing, you know. So I rocked up there, I had to borrow instruments. I didn't have an instrument. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was in a band and I'd literally never played before. So you kind of learn quick on your toes.
Yeah, you kind of have to when you're in that scenario, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, the music was horrible. Don't get me wrong. Like, I definitely would never want anyone to hear it. But like Paul said, you know, it sparked that thing that said, like, let's do it.
I suppose we better get on to concerts. It is concerts that made us after all. So as a concert goer, what concerts would you say have made you?
I was lucky enough that obviously at this point, you know, that we're from South Africa. And we've had our fair share of international acts at some point, but there was a time that there weren't many of those. And I was also lucky enough to live in America for a bit. And in that time, you know, every time I turned around, one of my favorite bands would be playing 5 minutes down the road. And I was just lucky enough to see, you know, 90% of the bands that I idolized as a kid. So, you know, I think big concerts that I went to that were cool were, I saw AC/DC at one point that I was like front row, and that was very rewarding, let me say. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that. It was a giant football stadium and 100,000 people, and to be so close that your ears are bleeding, you know, that's one of the many that I've attended like that since then.
I've seen them as well, and I always say they're in the top two. The other one for me is Metallica, but AC/DC, it's one I'll remember for the rest of my days.
Yeah, it was a show indeed. Yeah, I did see Metallica. In fact, Paul played a show where his other band was on the lineup with Metallica as well. Hey, Paul, am I wrong?
Yeah, so I've actually been pretty lucky to have toured the world basically and played with amazing bands. But Metallica came to South Africa and all the local bands were lined up opening for them and doing that stuff. And then someone came to us and said, you can either play at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 12 in the afternoon, whatever, when everyone's still coming into the stadium, or you can play after Metallica. And we were like, we'll play after Metallica. And everyone's like, you mad? No one's going to stick around.
That's brave.
Yeah.
They're like, who's going to watch the band after Metallica? That's so dumb. And our band at that point had a bit of a hit on radio, so there was a bit of a buzz and stuff. But we got such great press from it. We got more press from doing that than if we had played right in the beginning of the day. And we got to do 3 shows with Metallica. So, I mean, I watched Metallica from backstage for 3 nights in a row. Sat with a monitor engineer, met the band briefly. So it was quite an experience. It was actually really, really cool. And when we played after them, some people did stay. I mean, 40,000 people were in the stadium, like, you know, 35,203 left and the rest stayed. So it was still great, you know.
Yeah.
But we also toured with Snow Patrol, who I wasn't a big fan, but we got this tour with them and they're also playing big stadiums. And they were just the nicest guys and they put on the most mind-blowing show. It was just like an emotional experience. Them and Coldplay, it's just like you watch it and you're just like stunned by like what this music does to this massive crowd of people. It was just like, yeah, it was yeah, you don't even know how to compare it to anything, But then you go see a band down the road in a little pub, and it's as amazing. It doesn't have to always be huge crowds and huge things. You can be as emotionally impacted by small little band in some club somewhere.
True.
Beautifully said.
Oh, thank you. And Muse, I must say, we saw Muse also in South Africa. Also just like stunned everyone into silence. It was just like, what is this? It's just like mind-blowing. It's crazy how good they were. Yeah.
I think one of my favorites live performances that I ever got to see, I was just getting onto the cusp of like getting into my own music that I found on my own. And I just discovered a band called Biffy Clyro. They're from Scotland. And they came to South Africa with a festival called Ramfest. And I was also like waited the whole day right at the front of the stage to watch their performance. And that was also one of the most mind-blowing performances for me. Just, learning all these songs and falling so in love with them, and then just watching them on stage. Just such a powerhouse. It was amazing. I think I cried.
That singer's so good looking as well.
Yeah, it makes you question your sexuality.
We actually saw Biffy Clyro as well, and with Stereophonics, and that was also, both of them were amazing.
Amazing.
Oh, Stereophonics, that's another great band.
Yeah, and both quite raw. I mean, Biffy Clyro are quite raw. There's not a lot of, but when we saw them, not a huge production.
Yeah, they're amazing. That's why what I loved so much about the performance.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's the total appeal with Biffy Clyro, is that they're so raw. It's not overproduced, overpolished. Yeah,
it's amazing. And it sounds almost as identical as it does, on a CD or on your phone these days. But it was amazing.
And you've got to love horns in rock music.
Yes.
Love what?
Horns. Like a trumpet and saxophone.
Okay, horns, yeah, like a brass section, not like literal horns coming out of the head.
No. Well, that's up to you for interpretation.
And Paul, one for you now. Obviously, you're very well known from Parlotones. I'd love to know, obviously, when you join another band or start another band, people think of the benefits it brings being so well known. But is there any disadvantages that it brings to a new band with you being so well known from another band?
That's actually a very good question, hey? I suppose, yeah, I haven't actually really thought about that. I mean, obviously with Parlotones, it can be quite polarized. I mean, we were very, very popular, but obviously it brings a certain element of people who don't like you because you've sold out or you're too successful or your music's not edgy enough, whatever. So I think that could kind of carry over with you. If someone might look at the band and go, it's just that guy from Parlotones, that can almost ride off your new band without even giving it a chance. So I think your reputation could go either way. But I think also what's hard for me is just thinking about starting it all again. You're just like, sure, it was 20 years of a long, long, long road. And now you're going, okay, let's start all that again. But it's exciting. And hopefully you're going to avoid the pitfalls and the mistakes you made along the way with the previous guys. And I mean, our Parlotones is still going. It hasn't stopped. But it's actually a very good question. I'll have to think a little bit more if anything else pops up.
Okay. And I'm really looking forward to this part now. For any listeners that haven't caught one of your shows, what can they expect? Lay it all out for them if you can.
Well, you can expect Leroy making a lot of jokes on stage.
I never would have guessed.
I think, we do want to have a somewhat produced sound to it. We want to have backtracks. We want to have cool things behind so that people can get a cool experience that isn't just, us standing with our guitars in our hands and drumsticks. And we want them to get a cool, full experience. But I think what they really are going to see is like the love that we have for the music and, how raw and real the actual sound is going to be with what we're playing and how much fun we're going to be having while we're on stage.
Right. Any guys, anything else to add to that?
I don't know. I think Rixie put the nail on the head. The goal is to try and do something that sounds like both authentic and relatable, while at the same time still being some kind of show. But we've actually we've been without a drummer for a bit, and we've booked our first show in like a year in the next week. So it's also exciting for us. We don't really know what to expect from ourselves yet, but we're looking forward to growing into the space that we're envisioning.
It's funny you should say that, actually. That's one thing I keep finding out over and over again, that especially in South Africa, drummers are like hen's teeth.
They are so difficult to come by.
And they all play for everybody.
Yeah, it's like one drummer plays for like 12 different bands.
Exactly. In fact, the drummer that we've got now is so notorious for that.
Everyone wants to play guitar, everyone wants to sing, everyone wants to be the front, the center of attention. So I think not many people gravitate to drum. Yeah.
And finding a new member is also tricky, because you want them to be a good musician. Obviously, that's up there. You wouldn't be having the conversation with them if they weren't able to meet those standards in the first place. But even more than that, you have to get on with them as a person, especially if you're envisioning this like a path together. It's not enough to just be good at your instrument. That's already a given.
Yeah, it's the personality as well.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. Lots of people can do lots of things, but not everyone's nice.
True. And then something that kind of goes hand in hand with musicians, especially exceptional musicians, is egos. So that kind of makes it even tougher, I suppose.
Exactly. Especially, for me, the two people that I'm playing with currently, they're both super egotistical. You can't get it from the recording, but they're horrible people. Don't let their nice phone demeanor fool you.
It's just an act, is it?
Yeah. I'm actually the most humble person I know. Definitely the most humble person.
I think I'm more humble.
Well, you think you are, but you're wrong, because I'm actually out-humbling you right now.
Welcome to my life.
Guys,
These are the kind of jokes you could expect on stage.
I was just going to say, if the music doesn't work out, like, you could just become comedian, seriously, and do stand-up.
And it's quite funny because, like, Rixie's music's quite serious. Like what she sings about mostly is pretty, well thought out and well said and quite deep. But then we just go off on these random tangents of the worst jokes you could possibly imagine.
Right. And back to your shows then, is there a performance that sticks in your mind as maybe the most perfect one you've had or the most memorable?
There was that one show where none of us made many mistakes.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was a good one, yeah.
Considering we're like 3 or 4 shows into our releases, I don't think we've had enough time to get there. But hopefully, if we can release some music that can get people to be in the seats, then hopefully there's some memories that we can still make,
I think my favorite show probably would have been our first one, because we all sort of figured out how each of us was on stage. And it's a really cool thing to play with someone in a music room, but you don't really see what someone's going to be like on stage, because there's only so much room that you have in like a tight little band practice room. So when you're actually on a stage and there's room to jump around and be crazy or be weird or be silly or make weird jokes, you really get to see that side come out of a lot of people. And I think one of my biggest conspiracy theories is that like 80% of musicians are introverts. So you would not even believe that if you saw them on stage. But when you speak to them one-on-one, they're actually quite, awkward and geeky and nerdy, and they like love these weird things. That's why we've all honed on these, instruments, because we were geeky in our room. So it's sometimes just amazing to see this other personality come out of someone on stage. So I think our first gig was my favorite, just to see that.
It was a good one, yeah. It was nice. It was nice to have written these songs and gone through these band member changes and finally to get on stage and actually play them for quite a big, nice sized crowd, as well as a full room, and just hear it at full volume and just feel the music and feel the energy. It was a good one.
Sounds like probably almost perfect, actually. Sounds like a nice one.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, except for our playing, it was great.
I knew you'd have some sort of smart answer.
And sometimes like a false start or someone making a mistake, whatever, it just brings a little bit of a human element to a show, and everyone has a laugh and the crowd kind of warms up a little to sort of the humanity of it. It doesn't have to be a flawless, perfect show from beginning to end to have some sort of charm.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I always say you have to have the good with the bad. So for this one now, you can use any gig throughout your entire careers. But is there one that sticks out as the worst, and how did you deal with it?
Ooh,
That's a tough one. I mean, if I just think back to some of the harmonies I attempted to sing, then all of them. But yeah, exactly. I mean, like you just said, you got to take the good with the bad. And I like what Paul said about the human element, and is this pressure to put on this perfect performance? But I think that now more than ever, especially with the evolution of music, I think now more than ever, people want to resonate with the people that they're watching, and it's one thing to look up at a band and idolize their performance and be like, oh, that was flawless and so super tight. But it's a whole different level to look at them and be like, yeah, so they made a mistake or two. They're just people just like the rest of us, and they're trying to do this thing, and I think there's something to be said for being able to make a mistake and take it on the chin and still be willing to put yourself out there.
Yeah, we did a Parlourtone show because we started using tracks at one point, because all our albums had string sections and synths and choirs and all this stuff. And we're like, this would be so cool in the show. So let's make back tracks and click tracks and play along to it. And we were on tour in Germany and it worked perfectly. It was like every show went perfect, and it was building up to this big show in Berlin where like record people were coming and industry and German, and this whole thing. It was a sold out crowd, and then moved it to a bigger room, and this was just the expectation was through the roof. And then of course that night there's this thing in Ableton called Warp, where I don't know what it does, but it makes the music slow down and speed up. I don't know what it does. But that thing switched on, and our backtracks were just stopping and starting and speeding up and out of sync. And our drummer, we couldn't fix it. We didn't know what was going on. So every show, like every song was just a disaster. And we walked off stage, switched the laptop off, just came back on, and we said, we're going to start this all again. And we just played with no tracks or anything. And it turned out to be cool. But I mean, like what a nightmare, you're trying to impress these people, and they've come to see this big new band and blah, blah, blah. And you just look like a bunch of fools because you can't get your laptop to play. yeah.
Just don't do that with our band. Good.
Doubts on there, like, oh, well, they're just playing to backtracks, and their backtracks don't work, and they don't know what to do. So we just said, start the whole show again, and we're just going to play raw and live. And yeah, so it was that's something you remember for a long time.
Yeah, I could imagine. Sounds like something that had happened to Motley Crue or something nowadays. And when it comes to showtime, then do you guys, I suppose maybe you don't yet, but do you guys have a ritual, a pre-show ritual and a post-show ritual? How do you psych yourself up, and how do you wind down afterwards?
I mean, I can't think of anything more scary than playing like Stone Cold Sober. I know that's the new rock and roll thing, but I mean, you at least want a shot of tequila or something like that to take the edge off, so that's maybe pre-game. And then post-game is when you realize that you maybe had one too many before you started. So regret. Pre-game tequila, post-game regret.
There's a bit of a fine line. Like you need one or two drinks just to, like you said, take the edge off. But if it goes too much, then it's also not great. And I think after a show, it's not the time to dissect what went wrong and who did what, and like address the mistakes the next day. I don't think that when you come off stage and maybe something went wrong or someone made a mistake or whatever, don't address it then.
It was you, Paul. It was you.
It's always me. I can never get that one intro right. I know how to count.
Yeah, exactly. We have one intro that he always does. I don't know why. We'll get there.
Maybe we must put it in the backtracks.
And, it's a big commitment being in a band. How do you guys balance your personal lives with the demands of being in a band?
I think we're all fortunate enough that we have partners that are really understanding. We all have our own lives, and, it's first priority to be with your family. But I think we all have loving and supportive partners that are understanding that if we do need to spend, a couple of nights away, they aren't going to hold it against us. So it's just finding the balance of, when we need to be practicing, we make the time to practice, but also if there's family stuff that needs to happen, then that takes first priority.
Yeah. And, your music then, I'm sure it very rarely happens now, but how would you handle criticism or negative feedback?
Just don't listen to them. They're haters.
No, I love criticism because I think, everything is flawed, everything can be better. So I think, you've got to take everything with a pinch of salt, being creative as well, because not everyone is going to like it. But I think it's good to hear out why people don't like it, because, maybe there's something that you can improve on if you listen to what the people are saying. Oh, this is... If you listen to it and there's actually some value to what they're saying, sometimes it can help you improve your art and your skill.
Yeah, and I think if you're in a position that you ever think you have nothing new to learn or no way to grow, then you've already lost. You should never lose that willingness to evolve or learn. All criticism is constructive criticism, even if it's not put in the right way.
True, yeah. And as a band then, how would you guys like to evolve? What would After Wonderland be like in, say, 5 years' time?
Now we're all going to be silent because we're trying not to think so far ahead. I don't know. I think better production, better songwriting. I think better everything. And yeah, that goes back to what I was saying. Like, there has to be room for improvement, I would like to see a more varied approach to the tone of the songs, which is something that we have already with our next release that we have planned. It's kind of from left field, so it's really different. And I like the idea of not being stuck in one kind of sound. And I think one of the best things that we have going for us is that there is space for our songs to have different tones and personalities. And I think not all bands have that same benefit. Some bands are kind of locked into what they're releasing, and they're scared that if they don't release something that sounds like what people are going to expect from them, then they're going to take a step in the wrong direction. Whereas for us, I feel like every step is the right direction as long as we're taking steps.
So it's a good one. I like it.
And consistent growth. I think if each song's a little better than the next, a little bit better recorded, each show, a few more people, better performance, just like a consistent, steady growth.
Exactly.
That's manageable. Yeah, you can take each step in its stride. You're not suddenly going from 20 people to 20,000 people. You completely, because as it goes, you get better at all those little steps. You're not suddenly thrown into the deep end.
Yeah, I would love it if in 5 years' time we sounded like we had 10 years experience.
That's good.
Yeah, it is actually. And what's your views on the state of the music industry then? With so many changes after coming in recent years, and now stuff like AI starting to creep into the music industry. What's your views on it?
I like the fact that I like this whole idea of releasing singles, which is different from the past. I think in the past there's been a lot of pressure on releasing good albums. And I think the way that people consume music right now makes a single almost more attractive than an album, and I think there's freedom in that. You're not locked into 10 songs that are trying to fit together. You can take a step and try and release something new, and if it doesn't work, you can just change your path for your next single. But when you release an album, you're 10 songs in a direction already. You don't get to take one step at a time. So as much as we all love albums that have some element of cohesion, there is a certain aspect of freedom that comes from releasing singles. And I don't know, like AI, that's great. I think that people shouldn't look at it as this all-consuming factor. It's just another tool at our disposal. People had the same thing when we spoke about running tracks with a live show, but Queen ran tracks with their live show in the 70s already, and MIDI changed certain things in the 80s, pre-programmed sounds and that sort of thing. And every time there's this evolution, there's always people that are saying, oh, this evolution is going to take away from what an artist can create, but it's not true. It's just another tool in the toolbox. It's not going to replace us. It's just going to be one more thing that we have at our disposal.
True, yeah. And just back to the releasing singles, then you said, would you feel like there's an awful lot more pressure then on an artist these days to constantly be releasing something new? And would you be afraid of getting into the cycle of just endless single after single after single?
I think the idea of being pressured to be releasing music is actually quite exciting, because it sort of puts a fire underneath you, where you feel like I have to do this thing. I have to be creative. And I mean, you never really like have to do anything, but you know, to just have that sort of like outside pressure to try to create more. I enjoy that pressure. I work better when I'm under pressure like that. So I personally, you know, enjoy the pressure that we've almost put on ourselves to be trying to release more than one single a year. And, you know, eventually at some stage, maybe it'll be a single every 3 months and then an album once a year, you know, when we have the facilities to do so. But I enjoy the pressure personally.
Exactly. I don't do anything until the last minute anyway. So the quicker that last minute pressure comes around, the more inspired I am.
Right. And Paul, as the elder statesman of the band, then how do you feel about it?
You said it.
Yeah. It's. I think also when you're recording an album, you're stretching your creativity and your energy over this big project, you know. And it's like, okay, well, this song, you ran out of time, wrap it up, move on to the next one, and you know, maybe you're not finished with it. You know, later you think, oh, we should have done this with that song, but it's like, okay, we got to finish the next one. Whereas if you focusing on one, doing everything as best you can, and then going, cool, it's done, put it aside. Okay, now the next song we're going to bring in nylon string guitars and whatever. You can focus on the next thing and do that as well as you can. Yeah, and the album itself, as much as I miss it, I think it's not really a format that most people listen to. Everyone's just making Spotify playlists and streaming things off YouTube and watching it on their phone and whatever. The art of the album was like making each song flow into the next with little sound things. But that's I don't know if that'll ever come back as much as I miss it. But I like it. I like doing one song at a time. But then maybe you can always. I know like the Smiths and everyone used to release a bunch of singles and then compile them into an album at some point. So you could always do the same thing. At some point you go like, well, these 10 songs can now be compiled as an album with one new song we've written or something like that. And that's what's actually nice. You can actually just do whatever you want. You know, with music, there's no rules. It's not like a sports game or you can't just bring an extra player on in the Soccer World Cup or something. Like with music, no one can tell you what to do. You do whatever you want.
Yeah, the opportunities are endless.
The more rules you break, the better it actually is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, everybody loves a bit of rebellion.
Exactly.
That's why we all became musicians, so we could rebel.
I like it. And I suppose before we dive into the last couple of questions then, future plans that are set in stone, any gigs, music, anything you can tell us that's on the horizon?
I think with us just finding a drummer now, literally a week ago. So tomorrow is our second rehearsal with him. So, you know, live shows are up there. You know, we've been focusing on trying to come up with good material that gives us like a release plan, as it were. But it's exciting to have a full-fledged band again and try and get into this show aspect. But I'd say the only thing that's set in stone is try and get a fully fledged live show in place, which is what we're currently working on. And then try and not lose momentum with the releases, you know, try and keep them coming and stay relevant, I guess.
I think we definitely will have a third release out before the end of the year.
Definitely.
And the one gig that we definitely have set in stone right now is actually next week, Friday, which we're all really nervous about, but also very excited for. So
we kind of said yes to the gig before we actually had another member, but that comes back to that idea of pressure and lighting the fire. You know, if we kept delaying it and saying one day we'll get this other member and we'll get a show together, then I don't know if it would happen. But agreeing to play a show and then being like, okay, well, now we don't have a choice, we have to make it happen. That's that fire under your butt that you want lit.
I'll definitely be putting new strings on my guitar. That's it's about 2.5 years that they like covered in rust, and I'll get tetanus if I pick up that thing again.
Right. We'll dive into the last few. So as I mentioned at the start, these are a couple of random, odd music questions, but I'm intrigued to see your answers. So if you could see any performer from history in concert for one night only, who would it be?
The living ones, the alive ones. The dead ones, they're not going to put on much of a show. So, you know, any artist alive or dead, I choose alive.
I thought there was a band called the Living Ones.
So did I. I was like, why haven't I heard of them?
I haven't heard of them before. I think I'd love to see Wilco. Yeah,
That's a good one.
Wilco
I'd
radio.
love to see Nothing But Thieves.
That's a good one.
Also a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And the living ones for you, Leroy.
Yeah, exactly that. I don't know, I have eclectic taste. My playlist kind of jumps around, so whenever someone puts pressure to like name an artist or whatever, I feel kind of hard done by, because I couldn't imagine life without any of them, and there's not one specific one. I like them all. I like the flavor that variety brings.
Bring me the Horizon.
Yeah, okay, Bring Me the Horizon. I take my answer back. Bring Me the Horizon. That's who I want to see.
There we go.
Right. Well, if that's how you feel, you're really going to hate this next question then. If you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any musician from history, who would it be?
Oh, David Grohl for me.
Right.
I feel like you would have so many cool stories.
Definitely.
That's a good one. Paul, what do you say? Give me time to think here, bro.
Sure, I must have my brain spinning. I'm trying to think who would be interesting or entertaining. Who looks like a lot of fun? Actually, I watched the music video for Cannonball, the song by the Breeders, last night for the first time. I'd never seen the music video. And Kim Deal just looks like such fun. She looks like such a jewel. So maybe I'll just say Kim Deal for now.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know, for me, like there's kind of two different aspects here. Like on the one hand, you could pick like a virtuous musician in your instrument, because obviously that gives you an opportunity to learn. But I guess, the thing for me has always been like the instrument has always just been a tool to get a song across, So as much as I'd love to say some fancy Victor Wooten bass player or some crazy stuff like that for the sake of learning, and enhancing your skill, I think I would be even more interested to sit with someone who was notorious for writing good songs. Like what about someone like Max Martin? Does he count as a musician?
Yeah.
Because that's not someone, I don't know of him as like an instrumentalist per se, but what he can add to your songwriting skills. Yeah, I'd say maybe Max Martin. I like that idea.
Good one. Thinking outside the box. I like it. And the final one. So now this is almost impossible. So I've been told anyway. But what song would appear on the soundtrack to your life?
Oh, I already know mine. Mine would be that we're gonna take your mama out on my
Sisters.
Yes.
Very
That's a good
upbeat. I like it.
Yeah, very good. I don't know. I'd maybe say something like maybe something from The Offspring, believe it or not, like The Meaning of Life from The Offspring. I know that's a random one. Or Smash, that's rebellion at its finest.
Yeah, true. Good ones.
I would take something from Manchester Orchestra. Maybe Simple Math.
Ooh,
Yeah,
Simple Math. Yes, that's the song.
Not for any like lyrical specifics or anything, just because the song is like perfect.
One of the greatest, yeah. I have to agree on that. Yeah, and in fact, Paul got me on that song, and it's one of the best I've ever heard. It's up there. Oh, no, wait, maybe Rixie. I don't know. They're both Manchester Orchestra fans. I don't know what to say. They hounded me.
Rewind back to that question about one of the best concerts you've ever seen. I saw Manchester Orchestra on the beach, on Pensacola Beach in Florida. And it was also so good. I wish I'd known them better when I saw them.
Oh, man. Right. Guys, it's been an absolute blast now. Thanks for giving us some insights into your music. And personally, I can't wait to see where you go next.
Thanks for having us, Ryan. I hope that we have a similar chat in the future when we release our next song, which will also be really out there. So something different. And I hope that inspires you to want to talk to us again.
History in the parking lot, Hellman beneath the bar. Oh, I thought we'd go far. I still get butterflies when I think about that night. All the things we could have been. Thought it'd be like the movies. Wake up and get enough of me. But it's all like a bad dream. I want you to
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. And if you're interested in signing up to Band Builder Academy, use the link in the show notes below and enter the code CONCERTS and you'll receive 10% off. So, until next time, keep rocking. Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show's over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here.